Hello. My name's Jessie Quack, and I just wanted to welcome you all to this panel on book promotion. We've got some really fabulous authors to talk, and they're going to introduce themselves in a minute, but we've got Eleanor Whitney, Joanne McCall, Marissa Campbell, and Lindsay Pogue. So first, I wanted to do a couple quick notes of housekeeping, which is feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Please say where you're from, what you write, maybe what you're interested in learning about here. And second, please keep yourselves on mute. Leave your camera on or off how you like, but be aware that this is being recorded. We'll leave some time for Q&A at the end, and I will try to monitor chat as we go along to see if there's any questions, but it'd be easiest if you kind of save your questions to the end and then throw them in chat at the end. Or if we don't have a ton of people, we'll ask you to unmute and ask your question, that sort of thing. Third, as I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, so I'll send you all a link afterwards in case anyone needs to hop off. And then fourth, and finally, this webinar is being presented by the Author Alchemy Summit. What's that, you ask? Well, it is a marketing and business conference for writers and authors, which is being held in Portland, Oregon next February. I believe it's the 22nd through 25th. So it's a small conference, and it's organized around a single question, which is how can we better connect with our readers? So at least two of our fine panelists will be presenting at the conference as well, and I'll be sure to pop a link to where you can learn more about the conference in the comments. Let's see. I think that was all my housekeeping. Real quick, we've got some people near Joshua Tree, we've got Portland, Dallas, Vancouver, Washington, speculative fiction. Oh my gosh, Marissa Crawford, not Marissa Campbell. I'm so sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Excellent. Eleanor, will you please kick off our introductions and just kind of briefly introduce yourself, tell us about your books, some of the strategies maybe that you have used to engage your community and market your books.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's a really busy time of year and there's just so much overwhelming things going on in the world. So I so appreciate everyone taking some time out of their evening. I hope this is relaxing and fun and community oriented because we all need more of that right now. As I said, I am right now located in Southern California in the desert. I also live in Brooklyn, New York. Sometimes I'm a nonfiction writer and a musician and a content marketer by day. My most recent book is Promote Your Book, Spread the Word, Find Your Readers, and Build a Literary Community. It's a marketing guide for writers of all genres and at all points in their careers, whether you're just thinking about starting to publish or have published before, and it features interviews with other smart and amazing writers like Jessie is featured. I've also published a book of essays called Riot Woman, which is a critical but celebratory look at the impact of 90s feminism and the Riot Girl movement. And then a decade ago, I put out a book called Quit Your Day Job, which is a business guide for creative people. Before I worked in marketing, I worked in the nonprofit arts, in museums and arts organizations, doing outreach and education and fundraising. And I tell you all this because all of this has informed how I've promoted my books. So I'm a punk at heart and a zine maker. So I carried a lot of those strategies I learned just about building community one by one and nurturing community and uplifting other people in community into promoting my books. So when it came to doing things like setting up book events, I really took a very punk approach to it in reaching out to like-minded folks around the country, whether that was, a DIY like makers organization or a craft store in the case of my Quit Your Day Job book, or I did my book launch for Riot Woman at a bar that I love with bands playing and, that felt much more like a punk show than maybe a literary book launch. So trying to bring that really community focus into my book promotion has been a big part of it for me. And then just learning the strategies I used in the organizations I worked for and applying them to my own work. So, okay, like we have newsletters, we have social media. How do we use it? How do we connect with our audience? And how do I think about that through for my own work? So trying to be my own marketing department. And we can talk more about how that's challenging when you're a department of one. But those are some of the strategies I've used and still use. And I think now that tools like Zoom are so accessible to us, I really love that you can do events both in person and online and build community rooted very much in a place or all over the world. And I love the accessibility of that and the different strategies that go into it. So it's a little about me and my promotional background. And for those of you just joined, my cat Biscuit is off to the side here and she really wants to join the conversation. So if you see me fending off some white ears, that's what's happening. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thanks. Joanne, why don't you go?
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you, Jesse. And thanks, everybody. I'm so happy you're here this evening. I've been really looking forward to this event, and I'm very much looking forward to the February event. And I hope all of you can come because we're going to have a great time. I'm Joanne McCall, as Jesse said. I'm a publicist and a media trainer. So I've been working with authors and their books for years. I started in radio broadcasting back in the day. And through that, I had an interview show, and I found myself always interviewing authors. I've always loved books. I've always loved reading. I've always loved authors. And so I was finding myself interviewing these people over and over and over again. And then one day I just decided I wanted more control of my destiny. It's a longer story, but I keep it very brief. I launched my own PR firm, helping authors to do exactly that, to get in front of the media, to promote their books, to build their audience and all of that. Obviously, this has changed over the years and it continues to change. And I'm sure that's something we'll be addressing at some point here today. But working with authors is something I absolutely love. I've written a number of books myself. The most recent one I'm going to do like Eleanor did, because, show this is, and then we hold it and you make sure your fingers. So if you're ever doing this, you make sure your fingers are not doing this and covering the tongue. I want to make sure and hold it long enough so people can actually see it. See, this is kind of like a teaching element too. So anyway, it's basically how to do an interview. So we spend a lot of time writing books. Anybody who's written a book, maybe you're planning it right now, maybe you've already written it, maybe you're in the process of writing it, but there's a lot that goes into it. And you know this, there's a lot. When it comes to promoting it and doing interviews about it, that's a whole different skill set. It's an entirely different skill set. And so that's what Media Darling is about. That's what I do to help authors to really deliver in an interview. And it was really prompted because I was watching people do interviews and some were good, but a lot of them were not. And the reason they were not, well, there's multiple reasons, but mostly people just didn't know how to do it. We hear a lot about launching a book, but very seldom do you hear about launching an interview. And it's a very real process. It's about 45 seconds to a minute, and it does a couple of different things that have to happen. Number one, it tells the audience, the listeners or the viewers, whoever's partaking, however it's being presented, if they're going to stick around for a second question. And then the second thing it does is it tells the host where they can go in the interview, and you're helping them because it's a two-way conversation. And too often authors will go and hope that the interviewer host asks the right questions. And I'm here to tell you they won't. Sometimes they will. Sometimes they will. Many times they won't. And it is on you. And so this is a big part of it, is learning. You are in control of the interview, even though no media person ever will tell you that, but I will tell you that. You are in control of the interview, and you need to know how to go about that. Your key messages. What if you get a host who asks you a question that has nothing to do with why you're there, and it happens? Now, this isn't to scare anybody. I don't mean to scare anybody, but it is to equip you with the information to handle it, and handle it well, and handle it so well that you actually look forward to doing it because it's fun to get out of difficult situations elegantly and beautifully. So the strategies for promoting my own book, and I'll be brief because we have other people on this wonderful panel, but the strategies included developing my own ecosystem. I looked at all the people I know in my networks. If you think about how many people you're in touch with every week, what is it, 10, 20, 50? But how many thousands do you have in your networks? Because if you look at the numbers, there's a lot of people. What are they up to? How can they help? What can they do? What can you do for them to encourage them to want to help? So this was, I would say, strategy number one, but there are others. I'll leave it at that for the next person. But thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And thank you, Jessie. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. Marissa, why don't you tell us about yourself and your books?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa. I am a poet, an editor, and a literary organizer. I'm the author of several poetry collections. And let me see if I can do it right. This is my new book, diary, that just came out recently from Spite and Dival. And then I'm also working on an anthology that I have the galley for, the Weird Sister collection. So I started this feminist literary and pop culture blog called Weird Sister almost 10 years ago. And so the Feminist Press is publishing a selection of writing, including by Eleanor, that will be out in February of next year. And then I'm also the co-editor of We Are the Babysitters Club with Megan Milks, which came out a couple of years ago, which is an anthology of writing about the Babysitters Club for any of you who grew up reading those books. And yeah, so I mean, I've worked in kind of like small press publishing and online publishing in various ways, and also like Eleanor, have a day job in marketing. So I would say, like, as far as book promotion, like, number one for me is kind of what Eleanor was talking about, like just being an active member of like literary and feminist communities and participating in those communities, hosting events, being on panels, going to events, supporting other writers and their books. And so I just kind of have tried to, with the anthologies I've worked on and with my poetry books, like connect with the people who want to know about those books. And I am a poet, so I feel like I can be like a moody introvert and not want to go anywhere near self-promotion. But I also understand, like, especially having like a background in marketing, that no one else is going to support or promote your work the way that you are, or period. So like it's kind of like you owe it to your work to do that, and owe it to other people's work to be supporting theirs. So yeah, I think it's all kind of about like being in a community and in community with other writers.
Awesome. Thank you. Lindsay, your turn.
Lindsay. Well, I'm Lindsay Pogue, and I am a fiction author, and I've already learned something because I don't have a book to present to anybody to show you. But I am known to my readers as a genre-bending author. I started out 13 years ago. I was working at a bookstore and traveling, and I met another Lindsay, and we fell in love with books. And one day we were just like, hey, why don't we have some sort of a project? And I'd always been a writer, but I'd never really known how to publish a book. 13 years ago, it wasn't as widely accepted, or really there wasn't a lot known about indie publishing. So we were like, hey, let's just kind of work on this project, see what happens, just for funsies. So we co-authored a series, and that was kind of how it all started. And it was a post-apocalyptic romance series, which there also wasn't a lot of science fiction for women written by women at the time. So that was really, really exciting and fun, and also very hard to market because, I mean, science fiction has always been obviously a male-dominated genre. But I can proudly say that's really not the case anymore. As far as I know a lot of really amazing apocalyptic and dystopian and science fiction authors, obviously. So anyway, I was really lucky because I kind of got to dip my feet into the publishing world with a partner, right? Which is something that a lot of people they don't have that to fall back on. They don't have somebody to celebrate successes with and be scared with and that sort of thing. So that was really helpful. But from then, what was just like this little silly project of two best friends on two opposite sides of the United States and, the world ends and they have to try and figure out how to get to each other, turned into an actual book, into an actual series, into us both having our own careers. And yeah, so I say genre bending because I write a lot of post-apocalyptic and dystopian survival stories, but my background is I have a master's in medieval and early modern history. So I like to kind of take survival situations and work in my love of history. So sometimes it kind of turns into fantasy and anyway, but I think that's what my readers really like, which is really fun. But I think, I mean, oh my gosh, as far as my strategies for launching have changed a lot over the years. Obviously, there's so much that's always changing. I have always been my readers have always been very central to everything that I do. I think I'm an introvert, but I kind of feed off of my readers. And so I've always had like big events, whether it's, Zoom or the group, group events on Facebook, whatever it is. And so I've always really had kind of a deep connection with my readers, which has really paid off in the end because a lot of my readers or some of my readers have become authors. So that's really cool. So that's really great for networking and, swapping stories and helping each other out. I've been doing this for so long. I've come up alongside a lot of other authors. Some of them are really big. So I have a really nice, solid network of authors that we can, do promos together or, back when everyone was doing Facebook takeovers, we would do that, that sort of thing. So I think now I just really rely on this big network of people that I have, met over the years. And I mean, I also used to do a podcast for about 3 years. We would interview a lot of authors about their writing process and their books. And so I think for me, it's all about the personal relationships and connectedness between readers and authors. So yeah, that sums me up, I guess.
Nice. Thank you all. Eleanor, I wanted to throw you a question to start us off in the talking about marketing. I guess we've been talking about marketing, but to start us off, because both Lindsay and Marissa mentioned kind of the introvert thing. And I know as an introvert, my process for marketing, and I am here to learn from you all because my process is I write a book, I put it on the internet, and then I'm like, let's never speak of this again. We're done. But that obviously is not how people find your books. So how can people get over that kind of ick factor and really market in a way that feels authentic, that's fun, that's aligned with our values? Teach us.
Teach us.
Well, thank you, Jesse, because that is why I wrote, gonna try it, promote your book. It was exactly that. I think it came up not just working with writers. I think artists and creative people in every kind of medium feel this way. When I worked at an art museum or an arts organization, artists would just be like, but why do I have to do this? I'm an artist, I'm not a marketer. But when you're taking this on, like you said, you can't just put something on the internet or in your garage if you're a painter, just be like, I hope people find it, So I think there is this idea when we think about marketing, sometimes we think about like giant corporations and what they do for marketing. And first, to just remember, you're one person, you're a writer. So you're not going to, while you may learn from some of these more corporate tactics, you don't have to emulate them. Like you can decide what you want to do and what feels good to you. So first of all, like if there's really things that feel uncomfortable, you don't have to do it. There's so many ways now, like you said, to reach your readers. But I think everyone on the panel has spoken to this. First is just finding your community and understanding who your audience is. So your books are not going to be for everyone. And I think all of you know that, whether you're a poet or you're writing speculative fiction or you're writing personal essay, maybe Joanne's books are for like a very wide audience, because I'm like, everyone should know about how to present themselves. But, really, first, I think thinking about like, who am I writing for, and who are the people I really want to connect with, you know, through my writing, and who are the people I'm already connected with that give me energy back, that I'm inspired by. Who do I want to be in community with? And I think starting there can really help you feel like you're not just selling into a void, but you are bringing your work to people who are like-minded and can be inspired by it, while not shutting out people who you might not expect will like your work. So that's my first tip, is just understanding like who you're writing for, who's your ideal reader, and then starting to think about, okay, where do I find them? Where do they hang out? Whether that's online or in person or both, you know, and starting to build those relationships, as Lindsay so nicely said. Like, I really believe, even if we're trying to sell, you know, hundreds or thousands of copies of our books, that it's built one by one by one. And those authentic relationships, I think, will carry you further and support you in the harder times than just being like, oh my gosh, I need to like blast this out to as many people as possible. So also just building authentic relationships, putting the time in, and taking that time. So when you have been doing this for many years, you feel like you have a deeper network, you know, and knowing that that's what's going to sustain you. So those are some ways. Really shifting it around to being about community, I think, is how I personally remind myself to get over that ick factor. Sometimes you still feel, you know, a little nervous when you're like, hey, come to my panel, you know, buy my book. So then I also, Lindsay mentioned this about having a buddy. I would say Marissa is one of my promotion buddies. So having someone you can kind of bounce your ideas off of, or be a sounding board to say like, does this feel okay? Like, am I being like really just like tooting my own horn and not thinking about how to really connect with people, or am I getting in my own way? And I think for me, having a sounding board like that when I'm doing things like social media or my newsletter or making a big announcement, having that trusted friend and colleague to give you feedback can really help you get over that inner critic who's just like, oh, nobody cares, you know, like just stay in your corner. So those are my my pro tips, is like build your community, know your readers, and then have an accountability / feedback buddy who you trust, who can give you perspective. And then it's just practice. You know, the more we do it, like I started a Substack, as many people did, a newsletter this year. And like every time I hit publish, I'm like terrified. I'm like, nobody's going to want to hear this. So it gets easier, but you still have that idea that it's scary and it's hard to put yourself out there. So just remember, like, it gets easier in time, but sometimes it doesn't. And it's okay. You can acknowledge those feelings and still do it and still move forward. So that's a lot, but and I'm happy, you know, at the end to answer any more questions about specific tactics.
Nice. I think that like moving forward and doing things even while terrified has been the biggest pro tip of my writing career, for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to expand on this like idea of community and building your community, because I know the other three panelists also have some really awesome things to say, kind of in some specific areas. So I wanted to ask each of you to weigh in kind of three different parts. So Marissa, if you could talk about kind of building your literary community and building like how you have gone about doing that, some of your strategies. And then Lindsay, if you could then talk about kind of your building relationships and community with your readers, because I know you've done a ton of that. And then expanding the bubble out, Joanne, if you could talk about kind of building community or building relationships and community through media and publicity, and kind of how you've done that sort of outreach. So you all have marching orders. Marissa, go.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I feel like as far as building like literary community, I mean, for me, like I guess as a poet, primarily like as a poet, as a writer in general, literary community is like so important, because like especially with poetry, I feel like nobody reads poetry except poets for the most part. So it's like such like a built-in community, I feel like, if you're in the poetry world, because poets are the people who are publishing other poets. Poets are the people who are reviewing other poets. And you know, so it's such like a life-giving force to be in that community, right? And as an editor, so I started this online community, Weird Sister. It's a feminist literary and pop culture blog, and I kind of started it because I felt like there were a lot of literary blogs at the time, but they were very like, they felt kind of like boys clubs, and there wasn't much like feminist criticism happening in those spaces. So I, tried to invite people to be part of it who were the people who I was excited about the work that they were writing and wanted to hear what they had to say. And as an editor, so that's kind of like the online part. But then I think with the books that I published, the anthologies, I want to support and publish writers who are like active in the world and engaged in creating cultural output that is like important and exciting. And so I feel like we all kind of can become invested in this community, and support each other. And I don't know, I guess like with the anthology, the first anthology that I put out obviously was a book about the Babysitters Club. So it had like a very specific built-in fan base. So that was kind of fun because like it gave me, I guess, like an opportunity to reach out to people who were already like excited about and creating work around the Babysitters Club, but also excited about like these books that they grew up on. So we kind of did like, different creative things. Like it actually came out around the time that the Babysitters Club Netflix show came out, which just was kind of like serendipitous. It was like just in the cultural conversation, and I ended up like reaching out to the people who worked on the show, and we did some virtual events because it came out in 2021. Everything was online, but did some virtual events with people who worked on the show, and we're just kind of able to partner with that like built-in community in kind of like a lot of fun and interesting ways.
Lindsay.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on I feel like, and I don't know how it is with the other panelists, but as far as me and other authors that I've worked with, I feel like we're always torn or feel the pressure to be on all the platforms, right? To do all the things and post everywhere and find all the people. So, years ago, it was all about Facebook, and then Instagram came in, and now there's, Discord and TikTok and Reels and like all these, there's other things too. Those are the only things that I really have dabbled in. But anyway, I spent so much time gathering thousands of people onto my Facebook so that, I could have this, community of people that I worked so hard to get to know, and for them to, be like, oh, Lindsay loves dinosaurs. I'm going to go post this on her page because I know she's going to love this. Like I worked so hard to have all of those people like have some sort of connection and reach all these readers. And then algorithms get, chaotic, and they start, stop showing people everything. And it's like that kind of across the board. So lately I've been I'm known for doing big events for my like big annual events for my readers. I do like week-long giveaways, and I don't focus on me as much as like, oh, do this, follow me on, all these platforms, and then you get like a free book. Like I really try and make it about the group. And like, I know people are in knitting circles, so I'll do like some sort of like a subscription box for 3 months, or, just stuff like that. Like I have really cool prizes. I try and like be really in touch with my readers. Yes, I do focus on, my books and different things, different ways that they can help me, like, oh, post a review and put a screenshot and we'll, enter to win. So it's not like I just go in there and it's just a free for all and fun, but that's what I do try and make it less about like all about me. And because I feel like talking about feeling icky, I just want to have fun with my readers, because that to me is what it matters most, because I know that's the experience they're going to remember, is hanging out. That's why they keep coming back to the group, So all of this to say, now with social media changing so much and us having less control, unless you're going to pump thousands of dollars into ads all the time, I'm really trying to move my readership off of all the different platforms because it's also very overwhelming. You know, I have only so much time, and I feel like the longer I write, the more books that I put out, because I'm at book 30 and I'm just like, there's so much to do. It's like the writing chunk of my time is less and less, right? So I really want to stop being at all the places, and I want to try and focus on like, where can I be that my readers can always find me? I have control because I know who they are, that sort of thing. It's not that, you know, they're going through Amazon and I could have 1,000 people buy a book, but I'm never going to know who those people are unless they come and find me somewhere. You know what I mean? So I'm really trying to focus on having the information and having the community that I'm in control of. And so I've really started to, between selling direct so that I can and going wide with my books, which means, you know, I'm not in like any sort of exclusive subscription or like Kindle Unlimited or anything like that. My books are all platforms. I have my own bookshop so that I know who's buying from me. I can reach out to them. I have their information. It gives me more control and, again, more of a relationship because I can contact them. I can let them know like this, like there'll be a reader that they are buying all of this, like spending all this money on paperbacks. I'm like, hey, here's a coupon, at least for the next time, you know, here's a special code for you because I want to be able to do that for you or something like that. So I'm really trying to have more control so that I can have a better reader experience in that sense. But also, I am really focusing on like a subscription platform so that I can have my own community, my own social media, my own little blog. Like it's all in one spot. And you can follow me, you can subscribe, you can do whatever you want, but that's the place to go where you want all the, you know, weekly updates on what I'm working on or fun behind the scenes pictures or like I'm doing a huge, for my 40th birthday in January, I'm doing the entire month, I'm just doing a bunch of stuff. And it's all going to be based on that platform because I want to get all my readers from all the other places. I want them to be in one place so that I can have a relationship with them in that one place instead of trying to hope I'm still getting people all the way around. So I think for me, as I've, you know, mentioned many times, it is about trying to have a solid relationship with my readers. And I think that's why so many of them have stuck around so long, is because I think they can tell it means a lot to me. And when I'm having issues with one of the platforms, or if something goes wrong during a launch and they're like, oh my gosh, don't worry about it, you know, it's totally fine. And I just feel very seen by my readers. And so I feel like this is a really good direction for me and a great alternative, you know. Don't get me wrong, like I still want people to be able to buy my books and find me on all the other places too. But everything, even if they don't realize it, it all kind of comes back to this one place, you know? So I think for me, that's how I've been trying to really focus on my readership and building community, is getting it all contained, because right now it just feels like it's kind of, from all the years of gathering like information and knowing people and all that, it's just kind of like everywhere, you know? So that's kind of what that's how I've been trying to focus and zoom in on everything, keep it contained and controllable for me and my time. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I definitely want to talk, Eleanor mentioned like being a marketing department of one. So I definitely want to circle back to that because I think we are all there.
Yeah.
Can everybody, you post maybe some links of the things that you've been mentioning, like Lindsay, if you could post your Ream link and people, just so that everyone's got those in the chat. And then Joanne, if you could kind of, how have you built community? How can authors tap into their LinkedIn networks and et cetera?
So first of all, I mean, I'm just blown away by everything being shared here. It's just really fantastic to hear. I hate to say your struggles, but because I know there are struggles here, and there's struggles for all of us because things are always changing and we're trying new things. But I just really appreciate how open and honest everybody is. Of course, I work with media quite a bit, and well, that's really the focus. And when you've identified your market, your readers, and then it's determining, you know, where do they hang out. So if you're looking for new people, they don't know you yet, and you're trying to get exposure to new people. So you find media that speak to them, whether it's, print or audio or video or whatever. And then when it comes to building community, a lot of my community is with media people. And so I develop those kinds of relationships so that I can go to them and talk about, this new author that I'm working with. And anyone can do this. It's not brain surgery or anything like that. I mean, any of us can build relationships with the media and get any kind of coverage that we would like to get. And it's interesting that about 2 years ago, I started getting all these requests from thought leaders and influencers, people that many of us in this room would know, coming wanting TV, especially national TV in the biggest way. And the reason was that it wasn't dependent on any algorithms. When you got this kind of earned media coverage, it didn't disappear. You get the coverage and you can have it on your website, you could be sharing it. It does not disappear, it's there. And so I noticed a huge trend in that, of people coming and wanting that, and still coming and wanting that. And a lot of the reason, what they told me was, what they were finding, they were building their lists, launching something, and they would have just as many unsubscribes as they would have new subscribers. And things were kind of plateauing in that way, and they wanted to break through that. So I just want to mention that. So having access to those new readers that you're trying to reach, media is a great way to do it. It's not like social media platforms that, as was just mentioned, it can cost a fortune now. Ads that used to be pretty inexpensive at one point are now, out of reach for a lot of people, and only getting more so. And quite frankly, there are some media folks who are starting to charge money for podcasts and for various things. That's advertising. They don't like to call it that, but it really is. If you're asking someone to pay money to be on something, you're asking for advertising. There is an element of that going on. However, there are still lots of opportunities out there where you can get coverage and exposure to the readers that you want exposure to. That doesn't cost you anything. It does cost, you have to pitch a great idea, and you want to write a great book and have a great idea that you talk to them about, land the interview, and then deliver it, as I was talking about earlier, being able to deliver it in such a way. And so building community that way through the media, it can start with your local media. Just, down, the morning TV show or something, which seems so basic and so kind of, old school and that sort of thing, but it still can be very, very effective, because you'll have that video, you can have it on your site, it can do all kinds of things for you. Someone just came to me recently, and they want to build their speaking career. They want to do keynotes and that sort of thing. They've done no media coverage whatsoever, and so what we want to do is get some coverage for them. It's on their website, and that can land additional income from them through a different revenue stream. So it depends on your goals. For some people here, it may be, and I'm hearing this, that you have readers and you want to build a great readership and make your money and make your living from your books, which is wonderful. I think it's a wonderful goal. I want it myself one day. But for others, it's taking their books and launching whatever their business is, whether it's consulting or speaking or editing or whatever it is, and they want to do it that way. And so getting coverage through various media channels can give them that kind of exposure, and the money they make comes from a different way than actual book sales. So I think that's all I have to say about that, unless you have do you have another question, Jesse, about that? Or
Well, I was going to kind of ask next about, both you and Lindsay brought up kind of social media and how that's been changing, and we've talked a bit about things that maybe used to work but aren't quite as effective. And I'd love to hear what people think are like the evergreen things. I guess we've already discussed community, but are there other kind of book promotion tactics and strategies? So Joanne, if you could lead us off there, that'd be awesome.
yeah, it's interesting, because things do change. People ask, do they change a lot? Yes. In fact, it can be small changes, almost, it seems like, on a daily basis. And then it hits like this tipping point and there's a big change. And I've seen this a number of times over the years that I've done this. And this is not going to slow down. It continues. So, but what I find with the changes are with the tools, they're with, platforms. It's with things like that. The fundamentals will never change. Write a great book. That is never going to change. You got to write a great book. Pitch the book in a way that is done well. It's clear. It's succinct. It gets to the point. These things were important 100 years ago. They're important today. They'll be important 100 years from now. Write a great book, pitch it in such a way. These are fundamentals. They will always be true. The things that change are the platforms and how people want to be approached. And it used to be email was a great way it used to be the phone back in the day. I remember the phone. We used the phone. Not so much anymore. And then it was email. But that's not even so much anymore. Now it's like Signal and it's all these other things. And so I have to track what everybody likes and what they don't like and how I can approach them. And then I have information in all these different places. And I sound like I'm complaining, and I could go there, but I won't. It's just there's all these, and you know what I'm talking about. You have all these things and you're trying to track it and keep it all in. But those are the things that change. And they will continue to change. And I think part of this is a mindset thing. We just have to be ready for that it is going to continue. I love what Lindsay was saying about having her own thing. I think that is the dream. That is the dream. And it's a really great objective and goal to have, because there is all these other things going on. They'll all be important, but having your own thing and people knowing where to find you is really a wonderful, wonderful thing. So
Eleanor, I'll throw to you next.
Yeah, I was just nodding very
And
emphatic.
Biscuit.
Biscuit's tail. Because I think Lindsay and Joanne really hit on something. I mean, I remember all the way back in 2011, I think, when I was working at the New York Foundation for the Arts, we brought in a music publicist to talk with our artists about how to do sort of online marketing. Ariel, her name was, and by the end of the conversation, I want to give credit where credit's due. I'll dig up her website because she's amazing. But she was just like, email newsletter. You need to have your own email newsletter where you have people's contact information and you own it and you control it. And yes, of course, we know Gmail and things like that filter out promotions. So it's not perfect. But you're not at the whim of an algorithm. So I think about that a lot. And even with platforms like Substack, which is the new hot thing for a lot of writers, essentially it's an email newsletter with some other capabilities. And if you have a way to collect people's information and talk with them directly, that's really important. But I think going back, and again, just to echo Joanne, it's also having something to say and knowing what your goals are, right? Because I think that is really important too. So what doesn't change for me is knowing your goals and defining them and being clear about what you want to do, what's important for you, and where you're going to invest your time. Having something to say in a thoughtful, meaningful way that's going to engage your audience, and then owning some part of the way to reach that audience, which doesn't mean completely neglecting other things. You do want to be findable on the social platforms that your community is on, but knowing where to invest your time. So for me, it's gone through different iterations, but I have the same kind of email list I had from back in 2011, 2012, and I've just carried it over to different platforms as they modernize. So
Marissa, what sort of evergreen strategies have you noticed?
I mean, that's a great question. I feel like I'm thinking a lot about this idea. I think that you talk about this in your book, Eleanor, and also the author Beth Pickens has talked about this. This idea that like everything you do points back to everything else. So like I feel like that's like stuff does change, and like the channel that people are marketing through changes, and like how people are even doing marketing changes. But it's like no matter what, I guess like whatever work you're doing, it points to everything else, which I feel like I can take comfort in sometimes because like you sometimes I'm like, what is this even worth doing? Like, is this like the most important thing to be doing? But like, it's like if you're doing events, if you're editing, if you're writing, if you're doing publicity work, like everything, speaking opportunities, like I feel like everything kind of connects and points back to your work. And so I feel like that's kind of the thing that is evergreen.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like that is something that everything I do, it goes in different directions like a bunch of cats. So that's something I've been thinking
Yeah.
about in the last year is like, how do I make all of my projects and all of my identities and everything just kind of go work together? Lindsay.
Totally.
Going back to what you were saying about how you're just like you're in all these different directions. I feel like I don't know if it's just like wisdom after all these years of like we finally are taking a step back of like, okay, we need to breathe and self-care is a thing. Like we need to figure out how to not work harder but smarter. And I think that I'm kind of in that boat too. But going back to the whole newsletter idea or having owning that information of the people who are, your clients or your readers. I think for me, just to add to that point is it gives you the opportunity to check in with them and to pull them in a way to figure out like, where are they coming from? How did they find me? For me specifically, I write like two kind of, again, they kind of blend together, but post-apocalyptic and like a, dystopian fantasy. So which series did they find me? How did they find me? Like being able to pull them and ask them that, or like, what are the things they like most about my writing? Like all of those things really helped me decide also, what direction am I headed in the right direction? Or where should I focus more on my marketing? What worked so well that these people came over from, that sort of thing. So I think that's just kind of a little added layer as to why being able to have all of that information, or at least as much as possible from the people that are finding you, I think is super helpful in the long run because it helps you determine what your strategy will be. Because we fail and things change and we might have a goal and we miss it or whatever, but we need to be, we always pivot, right? We got to figure out what we're going to do different next time. And we can't do that if we don't have any of the information. We just have the outcome. You know what I mean? So I feel like, again, just trying to be smart about how you're going about things that you can be able to track and fall back on information and utilize it better in the future, I think is just really important. And for me, I'm sure there's other ways to do that, but the newsletter or somehow, having people's, their name and because I always get the name. I don't just collect emails, get the name and the email. And that's like the biggest starting point. And it's like kind of like gold in a way, because there's so many ways that people can find you and you'll never even know who they are or have anything about, never even know them. So anyway, just wanted to kind of add that little layer there.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
I was just going to say, I want to leave some time for Q&A, but I also want to talk about being a marketing department of one. So I'm going to hold that as like a possible Q&A question if we don't get others, but what were you about to say?
I just wanted to say, and my poor cat is now sneezing in the back, that one other thing that doesn't change is your values. Your interests may evolve, your artistry hopefully evolves, what you learn evolves, but like your values are something that is evergreen, and like how you treat people, right? So whether that's in person, online, like for better or worse, that's going to stay with you. So that's something I always think about too. So that's just,
yeah, that's great.
We have a question about how do you build a mailing list?
Yeah,
great question.
So so if anyone has questions, start throwing them in the comments. Before we get to those really quick, I just can each of you really quickly say where people can find you and what's the best way to connect with you online, whether it's joining your mailing list or connecting on LinkedIn or whatever that might be. So, Lindsay.
Oh, I went ahead and I did put a link in there. But you can find pretty much all my social media and my subscription, or my not even the subscription, but just all the places you can find me on my website, lindsaypogue.com. And again, we can put the link in there as well, but lindsaypogue.com, that's the best way. All the things are there.
Joanne.
The same for me. Joanne McCall is my website and also social media, joanne.mccall, pretty much everywhere. LinkedIn is great. I do have a newsletter called Savvy Sunday, and it's filled with tips, media tips that I get a lot of comments on it, which is really wonderful. And I'm happy to share that if anybody's interested. So thank you.
Eleanor.
I also have a website, eleanorcwhitney.com.
I would hope you also have a website in this day and age.
It wasn't updated until recently. And also at KillerFemme on Instagram is probably the platform I'm the most active on. But if you want to talk marketing profesh, feel free to find me on LinkedIn too.
Then Marissa.
Yes, I also have a website. It is marissacrawford.net. And then I'm also most active on Instagram. So you can find me on there. It's at Marissa_Crawford.
Cool. All right. So Nancy wants to know about how to build a mailing list. Who has burning thoughts on this?
Sorry. Okay, so I don't have burning thoughts, but so if you're starting from complete scratch, I mean, first of all, you definitely need, I mean, you can get a free account somewhere. I think most platforms, whether it's MailChimp or MailerLite, there are others. Those are the only ones that I've used. I think pretty much everyone has, like, for the first 900 people, it's free or something like that. So, I mean, definitely create an account, and I would just start putting that thing everywhere. Put it in the back of your books. If you don't have a book yet, put it, mention it in your Facebook group. If you have one, put it on your social media. If you have, it just kind of depends where you are in your, career as far as publishing. But I would definitely get something started, have a link that you can, and it's set up to collect your, the information, so that you have that to hand out to people, to email to people, put it in your signature line, if whatever, in your email. I'm assuming that at some point, if you don't already, you have a website, you would definitely put it in there so that people can get all the updates of all the things that you're doing. But if you don't have a website yet, and you don't have a book to put it in the back of your book, then I would definitely at least start putting it in social media and trying to share it around as much as you can. I'm sure there are other things you can do. I'm trying to go back to like how I first started doing it, and I honestly can't remember. Now it's just second nature. It's just everywhere for me. So I would love to hear what other people have to say, if anybody else has any other ideas too, because I'm sure there's a lot of other great ones.
I think when I started, I was doing a lot of speaking, and then people would, I'd have kind of a survey, what did you think? That kind of thing. And there was always information on how to connect for the newsletter. So speaking was a great way to start for me. I think that's really how it started. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking old school when I used to table at zine fairs, I'd have a little clipboard or notebook. I mean, it's now you can just, wow, technology's really come far. You could even have a tablet, so you don't have to deal with like, is that an I or an L? So you're doing your own data entry. But yeah, if you're doing in-person events, yeah, whether it's speaking or having that physical mailing list where people literally sign up, is also a way I started. I don't know, of course you want permission to email people. So I did send out an email from my personal email address, like when I very first started my mailing list, and said, hey, I have been updating you, with my band shows, and I have a book coming out. I'm starting a mailing list. I would love to invite you to be on it. Like, here is the link to sign up. So it's hard to get people to do that. Like, you might email 50 people and like 3 will sign up, and that can be a little hard to take sometimes, but you really want to make sure that you have permission to do that. For some like really big things, I will still send like a personal email from my Gmail to like my inner circle and just be like, hey, I'm really excited. It's like the extra personal touch. But I might, when I do that, remind people like, if you want regular updates, you can sign up for my mailing list. But also, as you're doing that, letting people know kind of what to expect, like, the cadence. So you'll hear from me very occasionally. I have something to share. Hey, I publish every other week, just so people know what they're getting into and can make the decision for their own attention span is important too.
I just have a quick question. Nancy, what kind of an author are you? Kind of a writer? Are you writing fiction or are you writing nonfiction? Because I have some cool ideas for fiction, but I don't know how they would apply for nonfiction. So anyways, I'm happy to help.
Science fiction Westerns.
Oh, okay. So fiction. Okay. I don't know if you have I'll try and make this quick. So usually we have what you call like a reader magnet, which is something that is maybe a short story, 1-2 pages, or something like that, or novella. Let's say it's, 8 chapters long, but it's a novella story. You can sign up for relatively cheap promotions. And you can even offer them to, if you know any other authors, to share them like in newsletter swaps or something. But if you can sign up, if you can create something that you can use as a newsletter magnet, for people to get that, you offer it for free, and for people to be able to read that, they have to give you their email address and their information. So people do it all the time, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. But I'm just the platforms or the services that I can think of are only obviously for fiction authors. But there are services out there that you can sign up for different promotions, or even using BookFunnel, which is it's usually free. You can do newsletter swaps and that sort of thing in BookFunnel, and people can download whatever you're offering, your newsletter magnet, and in exchange you get their email address. It's funny how when you really like put on your author cap, then all these ideas start popping up. But anyway, so just check out BookFunnel and check out what you can on the newsletter magnets, because I think that will be a really big help, trying to get that out as many places as you can.
And I wanted to say, so we're at 6:01, so I'm going to wrap this up. But this was super fun and not a disaster, which I was kind of waiting until the end to be like, will I do this again? I absolutely will. This was very fun. And one of the people who has reached out to me about wanting to be on a panel in the future is Tammy Lebrecq, who wrote Newsletter Ninja. She'll also be at the Author Alchemy Summit, but I'm going to get her on a webinar probably in January to talk about like more directly communicating with your readers, and we'll talk about newsletters, etc. So keep an eye out for a webinar in January about newsletters, and we'll also have to obviously do one about like how to be a marketing department of one and a writing department of one and a editing department of one and all of that stuff. So we'll put one together about how to do it all or not. That'll be in parentheses.
Not
because there's things, I mean, that's part of doing it all, right? Is like, what am I not going to do? Like,
prioritizing,
yeah. Aside.
Definitely.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thanks to our fabulous panelists. I will be sending out an email with the link recording, and also I'll round up all of the links to people's mailing lists and websites and all of that stuff to share with you all. So unless I am missing anything, I will say goodnight.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, everyone who
you.
joined us too. This is great.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Well.